Welcome to Unit 6 of Introductory Horticulture. In this lesson, we're going to talk about seeds and what they're used for and some of the special characteristics of them. um, Basically, seeds are a way of propagating or reproducing plants. This can be done either directly or indirectly. There are ways of propagating plants without using seeds. This would be called asexual reproduction, and this is done by using cuttings or graftings. Um, this is a very common way of hybridizing things or to maintain special characteristics that you have in the plant that you are trying to propagate. So what is propagation? Propagation is a sexual process. It's usually done with a male and a female. This is going to create a new plant, and when the male and the female uh, reproduce together, there's a seed that forms. Again, like I said, not all of these plants are propagated using seeds, um, but in the natural world, the seed is the natural way of these plants to reproduce. There are other ways to propagate that are not seeds. So division of roots. This is something that a lot of grasses utilize as a propagation method. And if you've ever seen a spreading grass, such as Bermuda grass, these use stolons and rhizomes to uh, multiply and continue to grow. So as a plant will grow across the top of the ground, it will find a spot and it will throw stolons into the ground, and these will turn into a new root system. So that can be separated from the original plant and it will still survive. Uh, we also can take cuttings of leaves, stems, roots, and these can be utilized to regrow these plants. One of the really cool things you can try is take a celery stalk. After you're done eating it, you take the bottom part of the root system there, where it would have attached to the ground, and you can actually regrow celery. And if you wait long enough, new roots will grow out of the bottom of it. This would be considered a propagation method of growing celery. Again, I talked about in the last lecture taking a cutting of rosemary and using a rooting hormone and growing a new rosemary plant. This is also propagation. There's also grafting. This is typically done with uh, fruit trees or other variety of ornamental plants that you would like to have. All apple trees that you buy at a nursery are all grafted. You typically don't buy apple trees or grow apple trees from seed anymore. Um, to have a specific variety of apple, you need to graft a desired piece of a tree that you like onto a um, an existing uh, rootstock. And so this is how you get most of your fruit trees, because you can ensure that they are uh, less susceptible to disease and they are a stronger growing plant. um, so propagation from seeds. This is a quick economical method. There are certain things that you have to account for. You have to make sure that you understand the seed's proper environmental conditions. So certain seeds do not propagate unless they've been uh, properly cured, or so you could say, by the natural environment. There are times when you actually have to take seeds if you want to propagate them yourself and freeze them or cut them or take sandpaper and rough up the seed coat to ensure that they propagate properly. There are certain plants that don't germinate unless they have been fired or heated to a certain temperature, or like I said, cooled to a certain temperature. So These are the different methods of propagating certain seeds. Now, annual plants, those are plants that only grow for 1 year, and typically they do not hybridize these, but you do come with multiple different cultivars of these, and so you can find the correct variety that you're looking for. So here's what I was just talking about. This is a scarification. That's when a seed has a hard seed coat, and you have to remove some of that. And in nature, the way this happens is as seeds are blown around, they are scarified. Or if a seed coat is hard, sometimes being exposed to water will melt some of that seed coat away. There are other methods, as I said before, with firing, and these do require some sort of time to rest occasionally before they become a viable plant. So when we look at what the composition of a seed is, this is very important. We have usually a hard outer coating called the seed coat. There is the endosperm, and the endosperm is the uh, food source for a new plant. So basically, as a new plant is to grow, it's going to live off this, usually a starch, a long sugar chain starch that will sustain the plant while it is maturing. And then the embryo is the actual plant. Sometimes this can be called the germ of a plant, and this is what actually is the living piece, the growing piece of this plant. So it's important to select the seeds that you are hoping for. You want to make sure that the seeds came from as locally as possible. Um, Sometimes if seeds come from outside of your environment, they don't grow as well as they could, and they don't germinate as well as they could. You want to use seeds as quickly as possible if you're using these for, say, vegetables or other types of desired plants that you are propagating. You want to know who you're buying these seeds from so that you know you're getting exactly what you're hoping for. You don't want to be getting something that is a different variety. And you want to choose the hybrid that is correct for your needs and what you're hoping for, color, and all the other aspects of the plant. So when you germinate, there are a couple different ways of using soils or a germination medium. Um, Sometimes they're done in soil. There's construction grade sand, peat moss, sphagnum moss, horticultural grade perlite, vermiculite, or jiffy mix. Um, Jiffy mix would be your potting soil mix, and all the rest of the listed ingredients would be put together into a proper growing medium. This is going to create the best possible uh, things that the plant's going to be wanting when it grows. It's going to be soft, it's going to be easy to grow through. You're not going to have to stress out the plant as it's first growing, and then you can transplant into a larger, maybe more heavily soiled medium after it started to germinate. So there are something called flats. This is when you don't use an individual uh, spot. This is done typically with, say, ground covers, or if you can separate the roots, uh, you can plant many seeds on a large flat of soil, and they will grow, and then you can separate them and put them into um, the ground. Sometimes they are divided. You may have seen these in the store where you can get like a 6-pack of, say, tomato plants, and they're all the same tomato plant. You push on the bottom, you remove the tomato plant from the 6-pack, and then you can plant it into the garden or wherever you would like to plant this. So there's an example of the cells. So you had flats, now you have cells. This is I would consider them basically the same thing. You're going to put one seed in each of these cells. You're going to grow this until they get to a specific size, and then you're going to want to transplant these into a larger garden bed or a larger pot. You have to make sure you read and understand how long it takes seeds to germinate so that they can be transplanted. You want to allow those seeds to be fully germinated and strong enough to be transplanted before you move them. So you have to kind of understand how long it takes for those to become a viable plant and ensure that you are seeding and germinating these seeds in the proper time of year so that they are ready on the date you'd like to plant them. Um, so sowing seeds, this is going to be pretty self-explanatory. You're going to want to shake the seeds. You're going to want to put them in the flats. Make sure you label the flats, and you want to cover the area where you put the seed. Typically, I take my finger, my pinky finger, and I make a hole in the soil. I put the seed in, and then I cover it up just to make sure that there is a covering. I don't typically compact anything or push anything down so that we don't have any compaction issues. And then make sure you're watering gently so you don't allow those seeds to float away. Seeds actually will float if you put too much water, and they can come to the surface. And if seeds come to the surface, then they are not doing what they need to do. Okay, so to water a fresh flat of seeds, it says right there, put it in a tub of water. That's so you don't have the water float or disturb the seed bed. You want to make, if you have to do water from the top, be really, really careful. Go slow. The way in the beginning when they're saying to put it in a tub, the soil will actually wick up the water and allow that water to um, permeate through the whole seed mixture just by the wicking effect or the capillary action within the soil. So when you want to germinate plants, you don't want to include a lot of fertilizer at the start. You want to let those plants germinate, and then you want to add in those fertilizer elements after the plant has become germinated. You want to germinate these seeds in an area that's between 60 and 65 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit. You want to keep them moist but not wet. You want to make sure that they're in an area that can retain a bit of humidity so that things don't dry out. If the soil medium dries out, those seeds have a tendency to die since they are so small and fragile. So you have to be very careful to keep those soil mediums as moist as possible. So transplanting them, you want to hold them by their true leaves, not the germination leaves or the seedlings. You want to use as least amount of pressure on those as possible. You want to typically I like to turn the plant upside down to allow gravity to help me get it out, so that I'm not pulling on the weak stems and then allowing them to uh, come out of their container and be put into the larger container. This is a seed, machine that is going to be used for direct seeding. This is going to be put into an area where you're not going to transplant. You're going to uh, typically plow the soil, till the soil, do something to prepare it, add in your amendments, and then you're going to go in with some sort of machine that will sow an area. Now, you can't do this by hand, but if you're talking about on a commercial or a larger scale, you're going to have a machine that will direct seed these into the ground. So in summary, growing plants from seed is a very economical way to propagate plants. It's probably the most common. Um, not all plants do propagate from seed, so just remember that. We will probably discuss that later on in class. Understand what an asexual reproduction is. So understand the difference between sexual and asexual and how these can be used differently. So thank you, and until next time.